I have a piece of scripture I just want to give you and just think about. It's Colossians 3:23. Everybody knows it. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for men. Dale mentioned I go on a lot of mission trips. I just got back Sunday night. I was at the Crow Nation in Montana, one of the absolutely poorest places I've ever seen, and I've been in many places in Africa. Hopelessness, drug abuse, suicide, violence, out of that sense of hopelessness, but incredible people of light doing incredible things in that place. And I've had that verse on a few mission trip T-shirts. That verse is there. Paul wrote that to the Colossians, and I think we can apply that verse in several different ways. But let me encourage you to apply it in this way. Everything you do prepares you for everything you're going to do. Let me say that one more time. Everything you do prepares you for everything you're going to do. God returns nothing void, ever. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the confusing stuff, the awesome stuff, God returns nothing void. Whatever situation you're in, whatever relationship you're in, whatever job you're in, God returns nothing void. Everything you do prepares you for everything you're going to do. I am a child of my generation, so I think in terms of movies, right? Anybody ever see The Karate Kid? Yeah. Now, I'm not talking about the new one, the remake. I'm talking Ralph Macchio. Right? He was in your Tiger Beat magazine, wasn't he, Tosh? You had him up on your wall, Ralph. Yeah, went on a date with Ralph. I'm sure it was there. And Mr. Miyagi, Arnold from Happy Days. You know, wow. Yeah, Arnold was there. Pat Morita was the actor. I love that movie. You know, if you don't know the plot, poor little Daniel is getting beat up at school by all the boys that know karate, and Mr. Miyagi saves him one day from the bullies, and he wants to learn karate. Mr. Miyagi, will you teach me karate? Yes, come to my house, and I'll teach you. So Daniel comes to his house. Faithfully, for weeks. What does Mr. Miyagi have him do? First day, paint the fence. Remember that? Paint the fence. No, not like this, Daniel-san. Like this. Paint the fence. Paint the fence. Comes again, paints the whole fence. Him's the big fence. Come the next day, sand the floor. Sand the floor. This way with this hand. Oh, and this way with this hand. And Mr. Miyagi's got this giant deck. Daniel-san. Sands the floor. Figures, I must be earning my karate lessons. Comes back again. Mr. Miyagi, yeah, wax on, wax off. He has this old car, and you wax on this way, and you wax off this way. Daniel-san, wax on, wax off. And so finally, he finishes waxing all of Mr. Miyagi's cars. He's got like 20 cars. Waxes all of his cars. Mr. Miyagi says, come back tomorrow. And Daniel's had it, and he says, Mr. Miyagi, I came to you, and you're making me a slave, and I need to know karate, and you're not teaching me a thing. And Mr. Miyagi, Hwah! And Daniel-san, paint the fence. And Mr. Miyagi goes, Hwah! And Daniel-san goes and blocks it. Sand the floor, and he's blocking. Mr. Miyagi's doing all this stuff, and suddenly Daniel realized, oh my gosh, I know karate. Mr. Miyagi was teaching me. I thought I was painting the fence. I thought I was sanding the floor. I thought I was waxing the cars. He taught me karate. Everything you do prepares you for everything you're going to do. And so I don't know if you guys call it this, I call it God sightings. Like God just does something and he brings two disparate things together and all of a sudden, bing, they just kind of, was that me? Love above all. That was odd. Leanna had a little button. Ding. Where was I? Mr. Miyagi. No, I was beyond Mr. Miyagi. God sightings are when God takes these kind of disparate things and he links them together. That's what I call them. I call them God sightings. And here's the advantage of being older. You look behind you, you can see a lot of links. The older you get, it's one of the advantages of age, the more links you can find. I'm going to tell you a story that has a lot of links in it, and I hope it inspires you. I was in Zambia. In 2009, I was on a vision trip. I'd taken a group of donors over, and there was another group. I was on my own vision trip kind of down by Victoria Falls. There was another group that was in Lusaka, and I got my donors on the airplane, thank goodness, and they were flying home, and I flew up to Lusaka to join this other group. It was a group from Menlo Park Presbyterian Church, awesome church. When World Vision's HIV/AIDS work started, they jumped in with both feet, just did some incredible things with us. And so they were coming over to Lusaka to walk with AIDS caregivers, to be able to see them care for their patients and see and use the caregiver kits that had been packed for them. I think that church ended up packing something like 25,000 of these kits that went to these caregivers. So that's what was happening. And so I met up with this trip. The trip was being led by my really good friend, Jason Miles. A lot of you guys, Tosh, he used to be your boss at one time, didn't he? Yeah, Jason's a great guy. He really wanted to be here today. I really wanted him to be here today. He's driving his daughter down to APU for school, and he had to actually leave like at 4 o'clock this morning to get her down there. And so he sends his greetings to those of you who remember him. And a lot of the story has to do with him, so I just pray I do justice to the story. But we're in Zambia, and I plug into his vision trip team because I knew this church and I know the folks there. Andy Smith was our church rep. He was on the trip. Jason was on the trip, and this was a group from the Bay Area that was going to come to see their work. And one day, having a whole itinerary worked out, we're going to be in the ADPs, things we're going to see. And one morning, our trip leader came to us and they said, the plans that we have for tomorrow, we were going to be somewhere in an ADP, and they fell apart. The ADP leader had an emergency, had to leave. They're not going to be able to host you. And so we're trying to figure stuff out, but that part of our itinerary just kind of got blown up a little bit. So we're like, well, okay, we'll figure it out. So there's a young lady over there named Kristen Twerdy. I met Kristen when she worked at the World Vision warehouse in Denver, and she had actually taken a job and was working in the warehouse, the GIK warehouse in Zambia. And Kristen came to us and she said, there's this little school in this place called Nombe Compound in Lusaka. And they're not a part of the World Vision ADP. They're not part of World Vision's work, but we love Esther, the woman that runs this school, that started this school. We love her. And we help her whenever we can. And she said, we have some blankets that were crocheted by Australian donors, and we have some shoes for the teachers, who are the moms, basically. This is a community school. No government funding, no nothing. Just a bunch of kids that have no school, and they created school. And she said, we want to distribute those. Would you like me to set that up? And that's what you could do on your free day. We're like, absolutely, that sounds awesome. So the next day we pile into the party bus, they get us all on the bus and we're driving in. And come to find out, when you drive to Nombe Compound, you drive through, Lusaka is a huge city, you drive through the most affluent section of Lusaka. This is where the non-Zambians live, frankly. They have big lawns, big houses, big walls around. It's called Roma. And you drive through that section, and then you make what I came to call the infamous left. You drive through Roma, you make a left, and you're in Nombe Compound. It has to be one of the most stark left-hand turns in the world, because now you're in Nombe. Nobody knows how many people live in Nombe. Could be 150,000, could be 200,000, no one really knows. It's the largest, most desperate urban slum in the city. We found out later we were getting all these stairs. We're driving through the narrow streets, heading to the school. Kristen knew the way. We're getting all these looks and stares, and we asked Kristen about that. She says, the Mzungus, the white people, they don't go to Nombe. So here we were driving through the streets, and we pull up at this. So here was the school. It was a half-built cedar block church that was under construction. Dirt floors, no glass in the windows, a tin roof over it. We go inside. They must have borrowed every chair and bench from the surrounding homes, and they had a place all set up for their honored guests to be able to sit. And we walk into this school, and we sat, and they did, the children come, and those of you that have been lucky enough to go, they sing for you, they dance for you. They're so proud of their school. The presentation part was over. We walked around, and the kindergarten was in this corner, empty maize bags on the dirt floor, the kids all sitting, broken blackboard, up on an easel. First grade's in this corner, second grade, third grade, and that's their school. It was pretty incredible. It touched all of us that saw it. It destroyed Jason. And I mean that in a good way. When he got home, he said he couldn't get that school out of his mind. And Esther, this incredible headmistress of the school, who had pulled this whole thing together, the teachers were moms who would just go to their different corners and teach as best they could. The books they had were ragged, if they had them at all, little nubby pencils, if they had them at all. Just incredible. And it just absolutely destroyed Jason. He got home, and he told us his wife's name is Cinnamon, and her parents were hippies. She'll say that. And he told Cinnamon, he said, I can't get that school out of my mind. We have to do something to help. And I want to explain, Jason lived in the Bay Area. This was 2009. What happened in 2008? Real estate and everything in America melted down. Jason was so upside down in his house that he wasn't going to be able to keep his house. And he kind of knew that, and he and Cinnamon were trying to figure out how are we going to gracefully lose our house. But he came home and told his wife, says, we have to do something for these people. And she gracefully said, what is it we can do? And they looked at their budget, and they figured things out, and they figured they could send $100 a month. And at least that'll be something, and Esther will have that $100. He'd gotten Esther's contact information, and so they dedicated to send $100 a month to Esther. Well, the only problem with doing that directly is the fees to transfer the money were $50. So $50 out of every 100 that they sent was being eaten up by fees. Their financial situation had become so difficult that Cinnamon had actually started a little side business. She was sewing. Cinnamon, if you know her, she's incredibly creative. And her daughters, Liberty and McKenna, had American Girl dolls. And so Cinnamon used to sew clothes for the girls and then matching outfits for their American Girl dolls. And people used to always tell her, oh, Cinnamon, you should sell this, blah, blah, blah. So she thought, well, maybe I can make a little extra money for the family. So she began sewing and then selling her outfits on eBay. Well, Jason's a pretty savvy marketer, and he kind of saw what his wife was doing. And he said, you know what, honey, instead of you sewing these outfits and putting them on eBay, what if we set up a website and sold the patterns? And so they incorporated and created this little business called Liberty Jane Clothing. Their youngest daughter's name was Liberty Jane. Liberty Jane Clothing. Patterns for doll outfits for American girls. And this business explodes and just becomes incredibly popular. Who knew that there is this population out there that absolutely went bonkers crazy for this thing, and hand over fist, people are buying these patterns and coming onto Jason's mailing list and becoming ongoing customers. So let me just stop the story there for a minute and talk about a link, a wax on, wax off moment. Jason was so discouraged about that $50 out of every 100 going to fees that he found this organization called Kids for the Kingdom that was working in Zambia. And he got in touch with them, and the guy from Kids from the Kingdom was awesome, and he said, Jason, we do work in Zambia. If you give me the $100, I'll make sure Esther gets all of it, and we'll pay the fees, which is so cool. And Jason goes, that's absolutely awesome. So that's what they had set up, and so that 100 was going. Meanwhile, Kids for the Kingdom kind of wanted to get to know Esther. They visited the school and saw it, and Esther was ready to lose her school. The church was ready to be opened, and it was going to become a church, and it couldn't be a school anymore. The man from Kids from the Kingdom had one of his donors call him, and he said, I want to do something significant somewhere. Do you have something for me? He said, I think I do. He took him to Zambia. They flew to Zambia. He met Esther. He saw the school, and they found a piece of property right across the road. They bought it, and he built them a school, paid for the whole thing. Esther now moves out of the church and has this beautiful, beautiful school. How did that connection happen? Because Jason didn't want to pay $50 out of every 100. Crazy. So now Esther has a school. Meanwhile, Cinnamon's business is just absolutely blown up. And Jason starts to tithe out of their business to help Esther. And now it gets to the point people are kind of hearing what he's doing, and they're kind of handing him money, and saying, hey, I want to help. And he says, I want to make a 501c3 out of this thing. And so he does. He creates something called So Powerful, a charity that's designed to undergird and help what's going on at the school. Well, meanwhile, World Vision still loves Esther incredibly. I don't know if Liz Maria Allen is here or not, but, oh, there she is. You're an awesome woman. Liz Maria Allen also loves Esther. And they were able to get a gift of sewing machines. And so now they had some room at the school, and a room set aside, and World Vision had gifted sewing machines to them and material and so forth. And so Esther and Jason were talking, and Jason said, Esther, how can we better help you? And they began to talk. She said, well, we have these sewing machines. We'd like to learn to sew. Cinnamon has a sewing business. So Jason and she talk, and they work, and they talk about what if we put together a sewing co-op that was supported by So Powerful, And the ladies there can learn to sew, earn a wage, we'll pay the wage. And what can we sew? And they settled on school uniforms. Every school in Africa is a uniform school. This one wasn't because they couldn't afford it and they didn't have them. They began to sew school uniforms for the kids. And the parents could make small incremental payments on those uniforms so that their kids could be able to go to school. Jason called that purposeful products. We can make purposeful products. And then the moms are learning to sew, they're earning a wage. And for a lot of kids in these situations, their school clothes are their best clothes. And every kid now it's a uniform school and kids can go to school. So Jason, meanwhile, is looking at his website and his business. He says, I had 20,000 names on my database of these people that are buying our doll clothes. And is there any way I can tell them what we're doing and kind of get them engaged? Cinnamon had just come up with this pattern, I got one here, for a little cute little crossbody purse. And he said, what if we put this purse pattern on the website and invited seamstresses all over the world, literally, because his clients are all over the world, to sew a little purse and send it to us. And then maybe World Vision would GIK it over to Zambia. Los Maria. So we're in I'm on the board by that time, and we're talking about this, and Jason said, but how can we make it more purposeful? I mean, it's pretty and everything. How can we make it more purposeful? I had just that week been shanghaied, really, into a meeting by Jennifer Holly and Jennifer Mounsey. Jen's still here. Jen Holly's moved on. And they pulled me and about 12 other guys into a room, and they said, you need to care about menstrual hygiene management. Absolutely. But seriously, they said, we need men in this organization to understand this issue, the impact it has on girls in the developing world, and care about this, because World Vision needs to be about this. And we need you guys to be the standard bearers. We need you guys to be talking about this. And so I had the issue with girls is they have no way to manage their period, so they stay home from school. Imagine your kids missing a week of school every month. What does that do to their academic performance? It happens right at a time, at 6th, 7th, 8th grade, when the kids are testing to be able to go on to secondary school. Right at that critical time. If these girls don't go on to secondary school, the odds of them being abused, early married, pregnant, HIV positive, skyrockets through the roof. If they can stay in school, if they can just stay in school and go on to secondary school, all those numbers drop dramatically. So I'm telling Jason this story. And we said, what if we invited seamstresses around the world to sew the purses? And what if we had the co-op in Zambia, the moms, sew the pads and the liners? And there were great designs that were approved and that we knew were good. So that's what we did. And we introduced the So Powerful purse. In 2014, Jason just put it out through his newsletter. Hey, by the way, blah, 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 blah. Just kind of said, sew a purse, send it in. Here's what we'll do. 503 women sent in purses. Awesome. And those went over to Zambia. They were filled with the menstrual hygiene management, and the girls their lives were absolutely changed by that gift. A couple of pairs of underwear went in every purse because a lot of the girls have one pair. Soap went in there so that they would have a way to be able to clean their pads. Year 2, 1,600 purses get sewn. Year 3, 3,700. Year 4, 6,500. Year 5, 8,500. It just keeps growing. And they're coming from 9 different countries around the world, this community of women. Some of these women have sewn 500 purses. And they're so passionate about what is happening. World Vision, GIKs them over. They go to Esther. They're filled with the menstrual hygiene management that the Zambian seamstresses are making and earning a wage and learning to sew. So it's now far beyond Denise Care School. 10 schools in Nombe Compound, community schools like that one, all the girls are supplied. And there's still purses left over. So guess what? They're gifted back to World Vision so they can be gifted to girls in the ADPs. And I want you to understand the power of that. Nombe Compound is the place nobody goes. It's the place where there's no hope. It's the place nothing good ever comes out of Nombe Compound. The women in Nombe Compound are gifting back to one of the largest nonprofits in the country this GIK to change the lives of girls. Do you get just the godlinks in that? are just amazing. I don't have time to tell you all of the miracles. The farm that's been started to grow food for the children. David Durr, I don't know if David's here or not, but Jason came in and made a little presentation a few years ago, and David Durr came up and he says, hey, my family, we have 10 acres. He has adopted children in Zambia and had bought a farm outside of Lusaka, just so the kids would know that there was land for them in Zambia. And David said, we would like that farm to serve a purpose. It's now growing food for the children of the school. In 2017, Jason was there, and one of the challenges he heard was the soap, the girls use it up, and there's no more soap. And he's like, okay, we got a soap crisis. We got to figure that out. He goes back to the hotel. Guess who's staying in the hotel? Liz Maria Allen. Liz Maria, hi, it's Jason. What are you doing here? Well, I got this donor that's donating these soap noodles. It's all the leftovers from when soap bars are cast, and we've got truckloads of this stuff, and we're trying to figure out if there could be a co-op maybe or something. And so now the soap that goes in every purse is being made by a co-op at the school, and So Powerful is their customer. And that's the soap, and whenever the girls need extra soap, and that's you, my dear. That's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. We just bought land on the other side of the school, and the goal now is we're going to raise money, and we're going to build the Needs Care Community Center, which is going to house the sewing co-op, the soap co-op, an industrial kitchen so the women can learn how to bake and cook, and they can sell and raise money for the school. There's going to be a library upstairs for the kids. That's our goal right now. My passion right now, and I just need to tell you one more quick story, and then I'm going to read you something. My passion right now is all these kids go to school, because that's the key and the secret. When we first went to that school, there was about 450 kids in that little church scattered across the floor. There's 1,500 children at that school now. 6 teachers. Morning classes, afternoon classes. I mean, it's insane and crazy. And you guys, it is like $10 to $15 a year to go to school there. And so these kids that do go, they're there, but they are on, I mean, it is a struggle for their families to send them. I was just there in May, and I met a family that lives on the other side of the wall, and I was talking to this mom, and she says they don't have the money to send their little girl to school. And she says, my little girl hears them singing on the other side of the wall. And she says, Mommy, I want to go to school. And she goes, I have to tell her that she can't. $10 to $15. There is, for all the beautiful children that are in the school, there's an iron gate that leads in. And that's where the children gather that don't go to school. And they just hang onto that gate, and they just look. And they see the kids in their uniforms, and they just wait. So my passion now going forward is that these kids will go to school. And we're starting a scholarship program so that we can begin to get these kids in school. I met 2 kids when I was there in Zambia in May. Their names were Ryzen and Josias. They were honor students. They were in the 8th grade. They had graduated from Needs Care. You know how kids go back to their school to visit their teachers? We do that here, right? They had come back. It was just weird. We were there, and they had come back to visit Esther. And they were in her office. They were 8th graders, and they were both honor students. And they were telling their stories and their dreams and what they wanted to be and what they were going through to be able just to go to school, the couches they were sleeping on, the miles they were walking. It was crazy. And they both shared that their ability to go on to 9th grade was imperiled because they'd borrowed the money to go in 8th grade, and they hadn't been able to pay it back. And so there was their worry about being able to go to 9th grade. And somebody asked the question, well, how much do you owe? For Ryzen, $37. $37. For Josias, $29. That was the difference between them being able to go on and not go on. And I'm standing there going, I have that in my pocket right now. Right now. Needless to say, those boys are going to school. But I came back to the hotel, and this is kind of what I do. I was processing all that, and I wrote something. And hopefully it's going to be a little flagship for us as we begin to invite people to care about these kids and get them into school. Can I read that for you? I got to go over here, though. See if this will, see if we got, uh-oh, that's not a good sign. Well, that's all right. We didn't test that, obviously, before, but I think I can make it work. I can see. There was a man named Lauren Isley that wrote a beautiful poem years ago called Starfish, the starfish on the beach. Some of you may know that story. And so I was inspired to write this by Lauren's poem. And so this story is called Starfish. Do you know the little story about the starfish on the beach? I'd heard it many, many times, the truth it has to teach. I had always thought of it as simple, quaint, or droll, until it came alive for me and touched my very soul. What? You've never heard this tale? This parable is new? Well, make yourselves at home, and I'll recount it here for you. A man was walking on the shore, the morning post a storm. Upon the sand were starfish, where they'd violently been born. Their numbers superseded what his counting could command, as numerous and endless as the shifting golden sand. A little boy among them came to dominate his viewing, for the man looked on in puzzlement at what the lad was doing. Bending down, he gently plucks a starfish from the sand, speaks some reverent words as he now holds it in his hand, and when his prayer is finished, he's as joyous as can be as he flings the helpless starfish back into the waiting sea. Time and time again, he puts this enterprise in motion, picking up a starfish just to toss it in the ocean. The man is quite astounded at this drama by the sea, so obviously pointless in its stark futility. In self-assigned authority, he then approached the boy. "You there," he called abruptly, "time for logic to employ. I say, your great compassion, it is laudable, I'm sure, to aid these helpless creatures, their prosperity procure, but stop and look around you. It's an overwhelming sprawl. You never will succeed and make a difference for them all." The boy just stood unblinking with resolve upon his face. Then bending slowly, he secured another stranded waif. And as the man looked on, the boy intoned a silent prayer, then tossed the starfish in the sea with dignity and care. He smiled, and then he said, as if to all, "Yes, everyone, I'm simply glad to know I made a difference for that one." Well, that's the little story and its basic metaphor, tragedy and tenderness upon a sandy shore. I'd heard it and appreciated what it had to say, but never really took it in any honest way. The world's enduring problems on a scale I can't conceive had drained my optimism and my power to believe. Yeah, I was like the man who viewed the overwhelming mess and said, "This is too big a thing for one man to address." Until I found myself in Zambia, Africa's jewel, standing in the middle of a humble basic school. Children fill the courtyard, they're God's little kings and queens, each with vast potential, each with futures, each with dreams. Yet every day is precarious on poverty's bare ledge, and their quest for education's balanced on a razor's edge. It's then my eyes are carried to a rusty metal gate. Other children gather there to hope and watch and wait. Hand in hand they cluster, here defeat and faith contend. For them, the school is out of reach, and they do not attend. Though entry fees are modest, I'd paid much more for my jeans. Their families are poor and simply do not have the means. And so they stand in silence as the glow of longing burns and wonder to the heavens, will it ever be their turn? I'm staggered by a single thought, no earthly power can block it. I could scholarship them all with just what's in my pocket. These children are my starfish. I exhale into the breeze. They're Jesus in the great disguise he called the least of these. I know I can't do everything. That's not within my power. But I can plant some precious seeds and help them grow and flower. So I will do my part and softly say when day is done, I'm simply glad to know I made a difference for that one. everything you do prepares you for everything you're going to do. Amen? Amen. Amen.